Hello again, everyone. I'm super happy that you are all here. I'm Dr. Tracy, and I want to welcome you to our master's class that my team entitled
Fierce and
but
feminine.
Fierce and Feminine. But I would actually have called this for years, Am I Possessed or Am I Just Angry? So today we're going to be talking about the ever important subject of women and anger. And this was such an important subject for me because I was somebody who was not raised with anger. I was somebody who was not raised to understand anger, except know what to do with my anger. And so, as I mentioned earlier before, this class I don't have my notes. I cannot get my phone to open with my notes that I can look at. So, I'm really going to be teaching from the soul during this whole experience. All right. So, our class today is called Am I Possessed or Am I Just Angry or Fierce and Feminine? I don't know which one resonates best with you, but I can only share from my standpoint. One of the reasons why this class is so important is that we as women are very disconnected from what I call our righteous anger. And in fact, many of us have been taught that to be feminine, we cannot experience anger, we cannot express anger, we don't know what to do when the best way that I can say it is our soul gets tasered and the whole weight of the world and our feminine image rests in the line of how we respond at that very moment. So let me tell you about a quick history with anger, my anger, I should say, because it's the only reference point that I have. And if you resonate with anything, as I'm saying along the line, just give me one of the emoji hands up so I know that I'm on the right track in what I'm sharing. For those of you who don't know my past, many in the room do. When I was in my middle to later 30s, I came from a very strict religious home. And my parents, after 35 years, got a divorce. And it was a complete shock because it's like somebody pulled the rug out from underneath all that was normal to me. And I always say that I love my parents, but my parents probably should have never been married in the first place. Number two, and they certainly shouldn't have had 4 kids. So, enough said on that. So when they went through the divorce, it's like all of us just went flailing in life. I did what many women do when the rug gets pulled out of underneath you. I married the first person who was asking. And before I knew it, I found myself being angry, or excuse me, I found myself getting married. And I found myself in a very secretly abusive relationship. And because I was such a religious person, I was holding on because God doesn't believe in divorce and all these things. And even though this relationship was secretly destroying me, when I say secretly, I didn't tell people about it. I was living in the shame and the secrets. If you want to know more about that, I wrote a book. It's called The Courage to Say No More. So what happened was that after 4.5 years, I went from being a young woman with the world at my feet. I had such hope for my future at that age of my life to only 4.5 years later, feeling like an old woman being dragged by the feet. I was emotionally beat up and bruised. I was dazed. I was confused, and I didn't know what happened to me. Now, during that time, in order to get away from the relationship, I had to go into hiding because, oh, as some abusers are, just thought that I didn't deserve to live. because I wanted to leave. So threatening me, he started threatening to hurt my family. So I had to go into hiding, which means that I had to move away from where I was living. I had to leave every item that I owned, minus clothes that I could pack in my car and my dog, Skitaka, a white Samoyed. I had to relocate to an area that I was not familiar with, move in with somebody I wasn't familiar with. And I had to, I stayed at my job for a short time, but he began stalking me on my workplace. And because of that, it was before domestic violence was a subject that we openly talked about without so much shame. They told me that if I couldn't control him, I would have to quit my job. Guess what? You can't control a rageaholic. So the end result was that I had to quit my job. I couldn't go home to where my parents were because he was threatening to hurt them, and I was terrified, embarrassed and terrified because I wasn't sharing what I was going through. It was a very lonely journey at that time. And so I moved to this area. I'm now out of work. During my marriage, they got a hold of my credit cards. When I say they had a big Irish Catholic family that had no boundaries, and he would actually give our credit card, but it was all in my name, to his family. And they ran me into tremendous amount of debt that when I left, I was overloaded with debt. So there I am, full of debt, completely broken as a person. Financially, I had to file bankruptcy. I lost everything. Didn't even have my own bed to sleep in. And that's where I ended up after 4 years of abuse. And so fast forward, as I'm knitting my life together, I'm in therapy and I'm making lots of progress. I'm learning about this thing called abuse, and I'm learning about boundaries, and I'm learning a bit about self-love, and I'm learning all these different about codependence, about love addiction, about all these things that are underneath me and I inside of me. And so I was about a year into my recovery. And in my recovery sessions, and how many of you have been to therapy? So in my recovery sessions for many years, they look like this. Hi, Tracy. Hi. How are you this week? That's what my therapy looked like for the longest time. So it's about over 1 year into my very proactive recovery. I'm feeling better. I'm more stabilized. And I'm engaging in outside relationships because I wanted to isolate from everybody as I recovered. So what happened is it happens to be with Spiro. You guys know Spiro, my husband. So Spiro, one day, who was a huge cheerleader for me, he said something. It could have been anything. And what comes out of my mouth, I swear, sounded like a demon. And I said, what is happening to me? So I stop, I cool myself down. I said, what is that? Next day or a couple days later, again, the same thing happens. He says something and something ignites in me. And the next thing I know, calm, cool, go along, loving, peaceful, quiet Tracy, screaming at the top of her lungs, dropping F bombs. And I turn around, charge him with all my strength, push it up against his chest, and push him as hard as I could. And I don't know what faith any of you are. I was raised in the Christian faith. And there's a Bible verse where the Apostle Paul says, everything that I never wanted to become, I suddenly find myself being. And that dropped in my spirit. And I said, what is going on with me? So I went back to my therapist, of course, because I was there every week diligently to get better. And I walked in, I call an emergency meeting with her. And so she's okay, I can fit you in. I'm like, it's really urgent. You need to fit me in. You need to fit me in. Okay. So she fits me in and I go walking in the room. I'm nervous. And she's, Tracy, what's going on? Why are you so nervous? And I said, okay, Nerisse, I know that a lot of wacky things have come out of my mouth in over the years, but I have to say it honestly. And she says, what? And I said, I think I'm possessed. And I was so lucky because this woman, she loved me and she knew me. And rather than looking at me like, dude, we are not going there, she calmly looks at me and she says, okay, why do you say that? And I said, because there's something happening inside of me. There's something awful happening inside of me. And the slightest little thing in life will happen. And the next thing I know is like there's an implosion inside of my soul. And all I want to do is hurt something and break something and harm someone. And it overtakes me in ways that I can't control it. And she looks at me calmly and she says, okay. She says, I have good news. And I said, what's that? She said, you're not possessed. She goes, you're just getting angry. And I said, me? Angry? No, absolutely no way. I, easygoing Tracy, does not get angry. I am a God-fearing, loving woman, and I don't get angry. I am a lover. I'm born on Valentine's Day. I give until my soul hurts to make sure other people are happy. I play by the golden rule and treat people as I want to be treated. I am a giver in life. So absolutely no, I refuse to be angry. And what I also shared with her at that time was the fact that her name was Nerisse. And I said, and Nerisse, may I remind you, I lived with anger. And it is the most ugly, ungodly emotion that I have ever seen in my life. Anger taught me to be afraid in life. Anger taught me how to not trust people. Anger broke my belief in love. Anger disconnected me from my God source. Anger is nothing but the pure ugliness of life. And now you're telling me that I am that I'm angry, and I completely rejected the concept. So another week went by, and I was very offended that Tracy was being considered an angry person. And also, I was afraid of it. And I was afraid of it because those of you who have ever, there's one thing about rage, but there's also something, a condition called being a rageaholic. And my ex was a rageaholic. And to me, the person that was working so hard at healing my soul was suddenly being told that I'm an angry person. And that concept could not, there was no landing spot for that emotion, because when I went into my recovery, one of the messages running in the background of my emotional system was, as God as my witness, I will never be this way to another person. So fast forward that next week, and I completely failed that promise to myself. And again, with the closest people in my life, I was exploding more and more. I'm at the grocery store and somebody in front of me, they're just a bunch of idiots. Everyone's an idiot. Everyone is a user, everyone. And I was curt and short, and I was so wrapped up in my anger. The same thing happens. I end up escalating a situation and a big knockdown drag out happens. And so I get myself back to the therapist and I'm like, all right, tell me about this thing called anger, because there's something inside of me that is dark and ugly and it just wants to heal. It just wants to hurt somebody. And I don't want to live like this. So my fast forward, I'll share more about that in a bit. I'll have to circle around, but I want to share this story with you. Fast forward, I'm working in the world of abuse recovery, trauma recovery. And I'm working with a lady who, she, like me, God-fearing, family-loving, survived years of a very abusive situation, divorced the husband of her children, went on with her life. In her 80s, remarried a man who was close to 100. And she was sent to the Wynn Foundation to see me to our group classes. Why? Because she was brought up on domestic violence to an elderly, her husband of 100 almost. And she sat in my office and she began to just cry. And she said, who am I? Who is this person? And she said, how is it that this man who destroyed me is somebody that I could never stand up to, and this precious, sweet soul that loves me and will give me everything, I take my anger out on him? Resonating with that, I listened, and she said to me something that I said to myself many years earlier. And she said, I hate my anger. I hate myself. I hate my anger. And I just want it to go away. And I shared with her what I learned in the initial states of my recovery from anger. And that was, listen, my sweet queen, here's a memo from Normaland. You don't want to get rid of your anger. And she said, what? I said, you don't want to get rid of your anger. She goes, no, but it's killing me and it's killing my relationships and it's killing the people around us. I said, no, anger is not your enemy. Anger is your friend. It is your friend in life that's been given to you for the protection of your life. And she said, you mean, Tracy, that it's like an angel that's dressed in white sitting on my shoulder, chirping things into my ear about how to do life right and wrong? I said, not quite like that. She's an angel, but she's not dressed in white. She's dressed in red. And she's sitting on your shoulder, pissed off as hell, yelling at the top of her lungs because you keep ignoring the things that are harming your life. And the more you ignore the things that harm your life, the louder she has to scream. And the louder she has to scream, the louder you scream in your physical life today. She says, what do you mean? I said, anger is our friend. The purpose of anger, and those of you who know anything about the Judeo-Christian faith, there is a verse that says, be angry and sin not. The emotion of anger is something that we are supposed to have within our emotional system. We're not supposed to ignore it, forget it, deny it, pretend like it's not there, or whatever things that we do. We're not supposed to do that. We're supposed to get angry, feel our anger, but sin not. And that is what I realized as women, we're not taught. We're taught that true love is kind and compassionate and sensitive and all loving and all giving. Anger, and write this one down. The reason that we are told to be angry but sin not, the reason that we are supposed to have anger as a righteous, that which is right, emotion within our emotional system, is because anger is a warning sign that something is wrong in your life. And anger tings us, bing, when no matter what type of denial you're in up here, your heart and your soul and your higher self knows that something wrong is being done. And the natural, healthy reaction to when something is wrong is, guess what? It's anger. But because so many of us don't know how to embrace that emotion or what to do with that emotion, we turn it into depression. We take that sucker punch, whatever's going wrong in life, and rather than say, no more, we instead go, go. Those violations that are sitting inside of you is called unhealthy anger. Anger is an energy. It has to go somewhere. But we women take it and swallow it and put it in our soul. And then we wonder why we end up sick or depressed or brain fog. In the world of anger, there are two types of anger. There's hot anger and there's cold anger. We all know hot anger. Who's lived with a rageaholic? Who's been the rageaholic? Who's been the loud, screaming, crazy woman where they're like, oh my God, look at mom. She's so crazy. I have a little reference point that I have in my recovery where my motivation to remain emotionally healthy, and for those who are close to me, you know that you've heard me say this before, that when it comes to my non-negotiables of life, my mental health is my number one non-negotiable. I protect that at all costs because I've been on the other end of it when I didn't sorry, my dog, when I didn't protect that. And the only person that ended up damaged was me. So in anger, there's hot anger and there's cold anger. Hot anger, yelling, screaming, shrieking, even the silent treatment is a form of hot anger. Then there's this other thing called cold anger. And hot anger is when anger goes out. Cold anger is when we swallow that anger and it goes in. And it turns into headaches, backaches, insomnia, constipation, gut issues, skin rashes, blurry vision. Turns into brainwash, could turn into alcoholism, can also turn into cancer, as it did with me. The reason that it manifests itself in our body that way is because anger is an energy and it has to go somewhere. And if you are someone who responds to the wrongs in life by saying, oh, it's okay when it's not okay. I'm just going to pray this away when what you really want to do is scream at the top of your lungs. You are consuming an emotionally toxic being, entity, energy that has the power to kill you emotionally, psychologically, physically. Why do we do that? Because we're taught that's how we're supposed to process anger. And it is one of the lies that culture has put us in. And if you are going to step into the next highest definition of yourself, something that's called the aspired self. And this is something I'm going to be talking about at the Divine this year. So please come to the Divine. It's that next best definition of you. So when you when you consume this hot anger from somebody else and you consume it and you don't have the proper way to process that, you're consuming a toxic energy that's eventually going to kill you in one way or the other, mentally, emotionally, relationally, psychologically, because it becomes a poison. But that's not the purpose of anger. Anger is a warning sign that something is wrong. And the healing journey is to learn to tap into what is wrong, stay in the clarity, and deal with what's wrong as an adult, as a feminine boss. So fast forward to my life when I was in the midst of swing back to my life when I was in the depths of my anger. I should say in the blows of my anger. So I thought about what Nerys had said to me about how I'm in my angry stage and I need to lean into it and process through my anger. And I was on a plane going from Southern California to Northern California. And I was thinking about my anger. And I had a notepad in front of me and I was doodling. And I was sitting there ruminating over my anger. And then I drew a heart. So I want all of you in front of you to draw a heart on a piece of paper, right in front of you. Draw a heart, okay? And as I was ruminating over this concept of anger, I had a black pen. I began thinking about everything that I went through, the affairs, the rage, the financial ruin, the loss of so many dreams, the destruction of my self-love, the fear of another human being, the fear, the loss of so many friends, the loss of so many opportunities. The fact that after I left, I ended up nearly homeless and had to go bankrupt, and he got promoted to $100,000 a year job. The fact that he got to keep the house and everything, and I ended up with nothing. The fact that I couldn't go home. The fact that I didn't know how to get out of my pain, where to start over my life. The fact that God forgot me. When I looked down, I realized that this heart that I had drawn was completely filled with the black ink of anger. And I had a really clear revelation that day that I realized that my healing had come to a stop. Not because I was denied by the universe of evolution, not because my therapist was bad, not because there was something wrong with me. It's that there was no room in my soul for healing to take place. There was no room in my soul for healing to take place, because anger was filling up my entire heart. It was an awful day because I had no idea how to get out of it. So let me ask you this. Does any of this resonate with any of the ladies in the room? Okay. So on that day began my journey to understanding anger. I learned so many things on my journey, and I want to share just a few of them. The first thing that I want you to know about anger is that anger is not good or bad. So unlike I was feeling at that stage of my life, I'm an awful person because I'm so angry. Look at how you behave, Tracy. You're so out of control. You weak person. Sound familiar? You do this better. There's a saying in recovery, you don't know what you don't know. And I didn't know about anger, and I had never been there before. The first thing that I learned about anger is that anger itself is not good or bad. Anger is simply an is factor. How anger manifests itself is good or bad. So the goal of anger is for us to feel the anger, to have that red dress devil say, hey, what's going on here? Something's wrong. And rather than react to the situation with, you instead put yourself in a thought stop, grab your clarity and say, wait a minute, what is wrong with this picture? What is wrong with this picture? Now, I want to challenge you on something. How many of you right now are dealing with something that's making you really angry? You're just up to here with it. And how many times, every time you get angry, you find yourself getting angry at that person, spewing over that person, ruminating over that situation, filling your brain with thinking how, why, losing days or moments because the anger is so loud in here, not being able to sleep because the stress of the anger is all in here, worrying about the results of what that person did to you. How are you going to recapture what's been taken from you? And then when you completely exhaust yourself, you then say, you're so weak. You're so weak. Why can't you rise above this? Why can't you just forgive? I'm sorry, when you're in the stage of anger on the grieving cycle, which I'll share with that in just a bit, forgiveness is a big F word. It hurts. It's assaulting. It's offensive when somebody says you just need to forgive the person who violated you. If you don't have the recovery and the healing to protect your heart, it's not time to forgive. Forgiveness is the goal, but it's not what we're supposed to do before we heal from the violation, before we get our power back, before we find our rightful solution that puts us on a fair playing field in life. I mentioned before that anger is not good or bad. It simply is. The goal of anger is to experience what's called righteous anger. And I mentioned before that there's a verse that says, be angry and sin not. And I want to give you an example that's separate from all of this. And I use it whenever I share this, whenever I share. How many of you have kids or fur babies? If you're standing in your front yard and your child or your fur baby ran in front of the street, would you be all zen, feminine boss and be like, oh, please, rolling by car, don't strike the thing that I love most in life? Would you respond that way? No. How would you respond? What is wrong with you? And you're screaming at the car driver and you're screaming at the kids or the animal and you're screaming. Why? What's wrong? What's wrong is that something you love was about to get hurt or could potentially get hurt. And as the mother of that being, not on your watch. Is that going to happen? Without anger, you would not be able to protect your kids. Without anger, you're not able to protect your relationships. I'm going to sidebar for just a second. Some people feel very guilty about having anger in a relationship. It's how the anger manifests itself. But let me give you a great tool to work with. You have every right to have anger in a relationship if the partner and the person that committed to you is doing something to break that bond. And you have every right to say, I am angry because you are destroying the institution of our marriage with these choices. And if this continues, it's going to ruin the relationship. And that makes me angry. So, no, I will not apologize for my anger. We don't have to apologize for our anger because anger itself is not good or bad. How anger manifests itself is good or bad, which means that we must work on our impulse control. We must stop the second that she chirps. Oh my God! Don't you see what's going on? And you stop and you say, that's my taser. I'm angry. And right at that moment, you need to show up for yourself. The better version of you needs to show up for yourself. Close your mouth, say nothing, and ask yourself very clearly, what is wrong here? What is wrong here? Several years ago, I had a couples client, and it was New Year's Eve. And I get a phone call, and she's crying. He's on the other end of the phone. What's going on? We just had the worst fight and blah, 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 blah. What are you fighting over? They were fighting over the knives, the steak knives at dinner, over steak knives on the holiday. And then both of them let their anger or their impulse control get out of control. And when I stopped and I said, you guys are not fighting over the knives. What's really going on here? And what was really going on is that she had made a great dinner and he showed up 2 hours late and it was a holiday. And through his actions, once again, he was telling her that she's not worthy showing up for on time. And that made her angry. And then when she called him on being late, he couldn't absorb that. But instead, he had to, there's an age-old saying, do you want to be right or do you want resolution? Well, he wanted to be right. And threw in his side of justifying why it was okay to violate her time and her energy, which only activated her more, which only activated him more. And the next thing they're fighting over knives. Anger is our friend. It will tell us when something is wrong. And in order to be a powerful woman, you have to accept that anger is part of your personality. I mentioned earlier about my pseudo personality, my alter ego, my alter personality. I call her 16, and we all have a 16 in us. And 16 is that side of us that one time I was asked in an interview, tell me about yourself. And I said, I think within myself, there's about 17 different personalities. And I think all women have about 17 personalities. And I told the interviewer, we all know each other. We all get along fabulously, except for 16. Man. And then later that day, I in my prayer and meditation time, I had this vision of a dinner table. It looked like the Last Supper dinner table. Okay, it was that's how the vision came through. And in this vision, there were 17 seats at the table, and it was the 17 parts of me. And as I looked around the table, I realized that 16 was like this ginormously the goop that the kids play with. They make that goop. Is what is it called? I don't know. It's just this sticky, goopy stuff. So
Slime.
the slime. So 16 was like the slime at the table. She had infiltrated every single seat of every one of my personalities sitting at the table. She slimed herself all over my ambitious side. Oh no, she had to slime herself all over my ambitious side because you can't be ambitious. Are you kidding? Why? Because somebody told you when you were young you can't be ambitious. My kind, tender side, you can no longer be kind and tender. Why? Because people are evil. So my sweet 16, she slimed over all other sides of my personality. When we have unrighteous anger and we're screaming at the top of our lungs, that's our sweet 16. She is a side of our personality that is our trauma. She is our shadow feminine. She represents our trauma and our fear and our ego and our unknown and all of the things that have yet to be worked on. But she only has one seat at the table. So when that anger tings us, we cannot let her infiltrate our rhyme, our reason. It's a very logical question. What's wrong with this situation? And I want you to test this on yourself. I want you to think about a situation that you're in right now that's making you angry. And rather than go into the rant or the justification that you do to try to process this, and that's all you're trying to do, you're just trying to process this. I want you instead to ask yourself, your logical, brilliant, ascended, evolved self, your higher self, what's wrong with this situation? And when you get that answer, that's what you tackle. That's what you address. You don't let people take you off point and talk about knives. You talk about respect. You talk about you're hurting the most important thing in my life, which is my marriage. And if you're willing to do that, you just need to let me know because I'm not willing to do that. Do you see how beautiful anger is? She is our friend. She is our friend. When I journeyed through my anger, it was tough because on your piece of paper in front of you, I want you to write down these words. What is wrong? And as you go through your life, so the download I'm getting right now is that one of you, some of you in this room who are so bogged down by anger that you're not able to get on with your life. that you have these hopes and these dreams and these desires and these visions, and you know what they are, but you're so consumed with what's been wrongly done to you, and you're stuck on the knives. And until you process through this, you're not going to be able to have the energy. I'm hearing energy. You're not going to have the energy and the thought span and the bandwidth in your creative and your emotional and in your psyche to get on with your life. And what's blocking you is that you're not accepting what is wrong. Do you want to be right, or do you want resolution? You have to discover what is wrong. Now, before I give you this exercise, there is an important point I need to share. In the grieving cycle, and anytime we experience a trauma, and a trauma is a loss, okay, it could be a loss of something you were trying to do, it could be a loss of something you loved, a loss. And nobody can tell you what is a trauma and not. You know when something hurts you to the point that it becomes a trauma. That there is something that is called the grieving cycle. And the grieving cycle begins with denial. I always say denial is not the river in Egypt. Denial is what we live in when we're not stupid. We know what's going on. Denial is when we simply don't have the tools to handle this monster that's in front of us. And so we just pretend that it's not there, hoping that our answers will come soon. So part of being an empowered woman, of being a feminine boss, a divine feminine, is any area of your life where you're living in denial. If people go, don't you know what's going on? I say, yeah. Then why aren't you doing anything? Because I'm in denial. And in denial means that I know what's going on. I just have no tools. Take all the shame out of it. Just don't know how to handle it yet. So I'm going to live in denial until I do. After denial, it comes a phase called bargaining. And bargaining is that phase that says, maybe if I would have, maybe I could have, what if I would have? And we bounce back and forth trying to find the logic and the reason as to why things happen. The third step is depression. And depression is when we are mourning the loss of what the trauma took from us. The fourth step is anger. In order for us to heal, we need to walk through our anger. And the fifth step is acceptance. And acceptance doesn't mean, oh, I'm so happy that happened. That's cool that happened. No. Acceptance means that this thing just doesn't emotionally charge you anymore. You reach a point of saying it is what it is. You don't have happiness, you don't have sadness over it. It simply is. I have something in my life that happened 15 years ago. I thought I was over it. I really thought that I was over it. And new things are surfacing in my life that's bringing up that old thing. And I have to walk through my processes of it and revisit the sentence. What was wrong? What was wrong? Now, there are many steps that we can take, and we don't have time in this class to go deep into it. But I am going to give you some tools of recovery, okay? The very first thing that I want you to do is on the piece of paper in front of you. As anger is a warning sign that something is wrong, I ask you, Queen, what's wrong? What happened? And what is wrong with that? And be honest with yourself. One of the things that was wrong with me is this person taught me to fear people I love. That is so wrong. I was an innocent, naive person in dozens of situations in my life. And they played me. And I loved them. And I was nothing but a chess piece to them. That's wrong. They were living two lives. That's wrong. I didn't get that when I worked so hard. That's wrong. And it's not, that's the only opportunity. But what's so wrong is I'm not getting the next opportunity. That's wrong. So, what I want you to do on the piece of paper in front of you, I want you to write down what you've been through and what you're angry about and what's wrong with it. Just state it. This is wrong. And why is it wrong? Because I'm a good person. Because it's just wrong. Those are not the rules of life. On the sidebar, a beautiful lesson I'm learning right now in my life is I was raised with the golden rule: treat people how you want to be treated. And I've gotten rid of that rule in life. I live by the platinum rule now. And the platinum rule is trust but verify. Treat people as you want to be treated in round one. And the second they do something to not play by the rules, go to the platinum rule and they lose access to your life. Super simple. So how many cheeks do you have? You have two. So I want you to identify what's wrong. And as we go to close down, and Tia, I want to confirm, we're here till 25 more minutes, is that correct? We end at 9:30? Good. So what I want to do is we're going to do a very vulnerable exercise together. This is an exercise that I call the how dare you exercise. And this is an exercise that every person who is living with anger needs to experience in order to be comfortable with their righteous anger and be able to make the choices that they need to fix the wrong in their life. Because when we fix the wrong, then our life works for us. And we're not angry anymore because we took our power back. So here's how this exercise works. I want you to choose preferably one person, if you need more, one that you're really having a lot of anger with. I want you to pull that person up in your mind's eye, okay? When you have it, just give me a quick thumbs up with your hand. All right. So this exercise is called the How Dare You exercise. And I'm going to be taking you in your mind's eye into a white room. So imagine yourself walking into this pristine, beautiful white room. And in this white room, there is a glass door that will let people in and out. In this room, there's a white couch. And in this room, it's a round or an octagon shaped room, just to let you know. And in this room, there is a white table in front of the couch. And in this room, the participants are you. For those of you who take my other classes, the you that you rescued from the side of the road, she gets to be in the road with you, the little you. You're highly evolved, what I call her, your next evolution sense of who you are. You are the physical being, and these are two spiritual beings standing side by side. And in just a moment, we are going to be letting into the room the person who has caused you this anger. Now, let's summons that person into the room. We're going to tell that person to sit down on the couch. And here are the rules of the room. Number 1, anything that comes out of your mouth is truth. Number 2, the person sitting on the couch accepts that as truth. And number 3, the person on the couch has no voice, but can only absorb as truth everything that you're about to say. This is a moment for your soul to set the record straight. So we begin. I want you to look at this person and I want you to address them by name. Hello, blah, blah, blah. I have brought you into this room to set the record straight. I want you to repeat after me out loud. If you can hear your own voice, it helps. I am doing this because I am blocked in unhealthy anger. You have taken enough from me, and it's time that this cycle come to an end. I have gone through a lot to reach this point, and I have truths that you need to own. Now I want you to repeat after me out loud. How dare you? And now state a truth. How dare you scream at me to the point that terror overtook my body? How dare you turn love into something fearful? And now it's your turn. You tell them exactly what they did. How dare you use me and my innocence for your gain? How dare you steal from me my innocence, my money, my purity, my hope, my joy, my self-esteem? How dare you? How dare you pretend to be one person and yet be a completely different other one and allow my brain to go crazy for years? How dare you play with a person like that? How dare you? How dare you be willing to sacrifice me for yourself? That's not love. Do you know what your sacrifice of me has done to me? Do you know what it did to my self-esteem? And do you know that when I was in that broken space, the bad choices I made for my life that got me even more hurt and violated? How dare you? How dare you? How dare you call me those names? Those names don't belong to me. They are your hurts, in your fears, in your violations. And how dare you take advantage of my innocence and try to put them on me? How dare you? And now I want you to say out loud the names that you were called. How dare you call me stupid, absent-minded, fat, ugly, less than. How dare you call me? Say it loud. Feel it deep. It was wrong that you called me. Say it. No person who claims love from another person calls them a how dare you. And because I will not align with an ugly definition of love, I have called you here today to come collect your words, your actions, your ill intentions, and the karma. All of this is not mine. Now I want you to see you putting everything that person did to you on the table, the violations, the theft, the black hole of despair, the lies, the deceit, the betrayal, the chaos, the insanity. Oh, and even the illness that your body is carrying right now, you put that on the table. And now you say, I want you to look at that. And I want you to point to everything on the table. Look at that. That is what you thought you had the right to deposit into my soul under the umbrella of love. How dare you? I want you to examine your soul right now, your body, your being. If there's anything else lingering there, I want you to grab a hold of it. Dig deep in your soul, pull up that ugly root of wrongness, slap it down on the table, make the proclamation. Now you say, you will take all of this back. I will no longer be your storage facility of pain. I will reclaim every ounce of my body, every space of my brain, every cell in my soul is now purged of the pain that you put in me. What you did was wrong. And I know it, and you know it. And now I want you to pick up all of these violations and traumas. And I want you to see this person picking them up. I want you to look at the little girl inside of you and say, is there anything we're forgetting? And I want to look at you to look at your higher self, to her, and say, do you have anything more to add? And your higher self says, take your violations and go and find your peace. They no longer live in the realm of my life. Now go. See them with all of the traumas that they've caused. Walking towards the door opens. They exit. You are now alone with yourself, with a clean soul. Breathe in. Feel all the space that is inside of you. Ready for the newness of life, ready for the evolution of who you have yet to be. The space to catch up on all that was lost during the years of the trauma that was holding on to you. It's gone and you are free. You are free. You are free to release it all. It is your past, and it no longer belongs to you. Hold space for that. See the molecules of creation beginning to ignite from every soul, begin to dance. The joy and energy of those cells are healing the cells of your body. They are dancing around your mind to restore your joy. They are infusing themselves in your muscles to make you strong. They are washing out your eyes so sunny days will be seen ahead. They make your legs strong so you can begin to walk. The ailments that you have in your hands will heal. Your back is strong. You are strong. You are healed. You are loved. Take a deep breath. Open your eyes. Your life work for home. Anything that's left on the list, start to go on record. First with yourself. Yeah, I was really angry about that. Why? Because it was wrong. What they did was wrong. But I don't own it anymore. That's their karma. That's back on them. Moving forward, you remember that anger is not good or bad. Anger simply is. It's how we choose to manifest it. And what needs to come off the table is hot anger that harms you and other people, and cold anger that will kill you. For those of you who find that your hot anger ignites, as quickly as you can, and you hear that voice inside of you say, what's wrong? What's actually wrong? You're angry, so something's wrong. What's wrong? And the second you identify, wait a minute, wait, it's not the knives. You live as a truth teller. Okay, wait, I'm going to stop yelling for a second. I apologize about how my anger just expressed itself. Let me handle this in a much more evolved way. When this happened, this is what's wrong. And I cannot allow these types of things in my life because I'm holding out for a good marriage. I'm holding out for healthy relationships with my children. I'm holding out for a prosperous job, a prosperous company. I'm holding out for my health. And I cannot allow things that are going to destroy that in my life because that is wrong, because I'm holding out for good. And so now let me repeat myself what my need is in this situation and what needs to happen for us to get to the next level. The reason that we are told be angry and sin not is that anger is our friend. It's here to help us construct our life into how we best want to experience it. She's our friend. Give her a voice, not too loud of one. And if you feel the loud one coming out, stop, breathe, and take a do-over. And reintroduce yourself to the people who you may have damaged your own reputation by how you responded with your anger. And if you are the type that has cold anger and you keep it inside, apologize to yourself. I'll say to you, how dare you hold somebody else's sin in your body and die for that? You are not honoring your life. So honor your life. It's our adult measure that we have to take.